The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome to the November 22nd edition of the Opinionators. I am Larry Deani, and the Opinionators is Cable 14's premier political opinion program with an expert panel aligned to the political parties of the provincial and federal levels. And let's meet that panel right now. Very first individual is Ron Corsini of the Liberal Party. Hello, Ron.
Hey, Larry.
And next to Ron, of course, is Tara Crugnale of the Conservatives. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Larry.
And across from her, Alex Johnstone of the NDP. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Larry, and I'd like to give a shout out to George at the Swires.
All right, and I'm sure George knows what that's all about, and that's great.
He will.
But listen, we've got a whole bunch of topics to talk about, panel, and the very first one is coming to you, Tara, and it has to do with the federal government and the secret foreign policy, at least that's what some of the media is being talked, is labeling it, that has shifted and criticized to some extent the Conservative government for being slow off the mark in terms of opening up markets other than the United States. You know that the United States is our chief trading partner, but China is important, and Harper took 4 years before he visited it once, and we're perhaps making the same mistake, although Mr. Harper has been there, with South America as well. Are we really off target, or do you think that the Conservatives have it well in hand? What's your opinion?
Well, first off, Larry, I hate to discuss a topic where it's about a leaked document. Clearly, there's a reason why this information was not made public, and so it's unfortunate that these things come out before our actual foreign policy can be addressed. But that being said, I think that that the Harper government is moving in the right direction. We can see that the economy is on the top of everyone's mind. We're trying to stay ahead of the pack in this global economy. We're really doing well we're going against the grain from so many. You know, the United States, yes, they are always going to be our largest trading partner. They're our neighbors. They account for more than 70% of our trade. And yes, we do have to continue and look into other countries to get good, trade agreements going on. I think the issue, especially with a country like China, is that, initially we didn't want to deal with countries perhaps that had different human rights records that we didn't agree with. But now we're kind of coming to the understanding that we do have to go forward, and we might not be able to change everything about a country in terms of their human rights, how they treat workers, but maybe our trade with them can bring some promise to those countries.
Well, Alex, Tara talks from a good conservative perspective, because she's a good conservative, but the leaked document, although it is leaked, does criticize and leave the government open to criticism. So what do you think about that from your perspective?
Well, the document essentially says, Larry, that the government should be doing more of the same and continue down that path. I think that the real holes in this document is that it doesn't talk about human rights abuses. It doesn't talk about our traditional role of peacekeeping. And all of these play a very important role in with trade and certainly impact trade. I think that overall, and Tom Moncler came out with a very interesting or different direction on free trade agreements a few weeks ago, which is that the NDP is in support of free trade agreements, but only on a case-by-case basis. And so I think that where Tom would certainly punch holes in this report is that not to go rushing, head over heels into just any.
Clearly, we haven't been rushing. We've been taking
well, you
years,
have. Look at how many trade agreements you've been going into recently with the EU. Certainly, looking at trade agreements with China, with India.
The world waits for
every
no one.
Week, every week.
When business is going to be made,
Okay, hang on, panel.
From my point of view.
But let me frame it this way for you, Ron. because the Liberals under Chrétien certainly led the way in terms of opening up new markets. So you've got something, your party has something to be proud of, but you're out of power now. So what do you make of this?
Well, we set the example. I'm deeply disappointed in this government because I believe this government has no foreign policy. It has no foreign policy. Now you're playing catch-up when all the world is going after all these emerging markets in South America,
how many weeks
India,
have I been
all over the place, and
listening
we've
to
been
the two of you gripe about
on
us
the
and
US.
China,
The
us
U.S.
and
is in
India.
economic turmoil. This document is purely economic. It has nothing to do with...
It has to be economical. That's what we care about.
It has nothing to do with human rights and all the other things.
All right, but listen. Hang on.
Since 2006, this is the first time a Canadian Prime Minister has gone to visit China. He's been in power since 2006.
You know, there are reasons for that. There are reasons for that. We were trying to
hang on. Listen, panel.
Abuses.
Remember what one of our viewers said a few weeks ago, that when we talk over each other, nobody gets anything said. So fair enough, Ron. You've made your point. Tara, go ahead.
Just to reiterate, I mean, when we tiptoe around human rights abuses, Stephen Harper was trying to shy away from that because he understood that it's important in our country for us to treat everyone fairly. We're against discrimination. We're against so many things that some of these countries stand for. But unfortunately, in this day and age, we need to make trade with them. And if that means holding off on our discussions about
child labor, slave labor,
and you don't,
so be it.
And where did your iPhone come from? Come on. I mean, it happens everywhere to everyone.
No, that's
but,
it's
so
wrong. It's wrong, but it does happen. But you're not going to be able. You can't stop other countries from doing that.
When you having trade deals with them is one way of applying pressure.
But don't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You have an iPhone. I have an iPhone. Ron has an iPhone. We all do. And
Mine was made in California.
Was it?
All right. And listen, let's leave that.
I still lobby for the rights.
Tara and Alex, let's leave it at that because, of course, I've got a BlackBerry, so I'm the true Canadian.
There you go.
But that's another story. You've all made your points. And let's go to another topic. And we're going to go to you on this one, Ron, and we're going to bring it down to the provincial level. And you know that the Liberals have been way behind, although they're governing the province of Ontario now. They've got a premier who has resigned, essentially, even though he's in power until the new leader is chosen. And they've been trailing in the polls behind the Conservatives and the NDP, who is surging to some extent. And yet, in spite of all that, they have managed to negotiate some deals with doctors. Nobody said that would have been possible. And teachers, everybody said that would have been impossible. So does that mean that the new leader walks into potential majority territory again?
Well, I would hope so, because this government is sound enough to be able to talk this out with the doctors and teachers are coming online now. A number of boards throughout the province have signed on to the agreement, and they have until the end of December to do so. So I think that we are coming into a much better position than we were, a couple of months ago before all this started. So the new leader coming in would certainly have work to do, but certainly coming into a much more peaceful environment in the province.
Alex, what do you think?
Well, Larry, I do have some breaking news, and that is that the ministry has approved the deal with OSSTF here in Hamilton. I have to say that there was enormous leadership shown, certainly by the school board here, by our local unions, but the ministry and certainly McGuinty's government really went to town, and they really jeopardized labor relations across the province. This was unnecessary. You don't take away people's rights just because you think they might go on strike. That is no excuse for taking away rights. There was so much turmoil caused across this province and unnecessarily. And the fact is,
blame us for the
but my rights were taken away also because I work in education and I'm a member of CUPE.
The fact is,
so I'm
it was
upset by that.
unnecessary, and at the end of the day, school boards can reach deals, and that's exactly what that's exactly what we were doing. It was unnecessary.
Indeed, let's give Tara a chance. And Tara, some people would say that it's because of that hammer hanging over everybody's head that the deals were struck. What do you say?
It's just amazing. I didn't know that the Liberals were so limber, able to bend over backwards just to get these deals done in order to save their own hides, and at the cost of taxpayers to boot. So thank you very much to Dalton McGuinty and Ron yourself. We can't really go into what these deals are about because we're not sitting. We don't know really what deals have been made. And what the Liberals have done has ensured at least that they've got the votes of maybe, half the teachers, if not more, and the doctors. And sure, now they're back into majority territory. So, good for you for playing politics.
What would Dalton have done? I really would like to have.
You don't think it was Dalton?
Do they have little bracelets? What
What,
would Dalton do?
not Hudak. What would Hudak have done?
We would have stood firm, and we would have made strikes illegal. We would have cut wages. And that's the truth.
Can you imagine the turmoil in Ontario then?
Do you understand how much in debt we are? And you're just giving money away again.
Well, but the deals, we don't know the details. We'll find out in the next few days. I imagine if they've been struck. The government had some principles, and the teachers had some principles as well. So my guess is that everybody lost a little, everybody gains a little, but we've got labor peace. And what I hear you say is that politically, at least, that was a good move. You've got to be happy about that.
I'm very pleased by the negotiations that have taken place. At least they came back to the table and talked this out, rather than originally.
This plays out more like a soap opera.
Well,
than
and less comment to you, Alex, because although you're saying that rights were taken away, in fact, rights have been exercised, the collective bargaining rights, if they've struck deals. You've got to be happy about that at least.
No, I'm sorry, Larry. The fact is that this was a gross violation of not only labor rights but human rights. There was this created so much turmoil across the province, and we've seen settlements now with Upper Grand, with York, and we'll find out soon if Windsor has gone. There was no reason for their rights to be taken away. So justify to me why these people's rights should have been taken away.
I ask the questions, I don't give the answers.
Alex.
Listen, we're going to have to move to the last topic, but that's a good question. Let's leave it there and let's see what the deals are all about, and then I'm sure we'll come back to that as well. This one's for you, Alex, and we're going to go up to the federal level again, and it has to do with the awful war that's been happening in the Middle East. Israel, in Gaza, Hamas has been agitating there as well. And Mr. Harper, true to form, has come squarely in support of Israel yet again. Some would say that he is very much a soulmate of Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu in terms of his hardline positions against anybody on the Palestinian side. And Harper has repledged support for Israel and their strategy of aggression or defense, but really aggression as well, against the folks in Gaza. That seems to have changed. The support for Israel has always been there, but the hard line, one side only is right, attitude that Harper has taken has also altered our foreign policy with regards to the Middle East. What do you say about that?
Well, Larry, what many people may not realize is that Tom Mulcair's in-laws actually are Holocaust survivors. And he has a huge following, certainly in Quebec, from the Jewish community. That said, I don't think that we need to be picking sides here. I look at the fact that it doesn't matter to me who shot the first missile. There is innocent people being killed here. There were all kinds of children that died over the past week needlessly. And I think that Canada should be playing a much more stronger role, helping them to negotiate, to come to peace settlements, similar to the U.S. Hillary Clinton was over there helping them to broker a deal. I don't hear that kind of language coming from our Prime Minister. And that's the kind of leadership we expect, because there's absolutely no justification for killing children. And that is not okay.
And I don't think they meant to do that. You're right. You know what? Having lived and worked in Israel for over 2 months, I could see their side of it. They are defending their land, and they have every right to do so. The military, you know what? And I blame this all on government.
Yes.
They are especially in Gaza. When you have a terrorist government that wants to see Israel destroyed, if the people elect a government in Gaza that could negotiate and talk this out rather than bomb each other, because there are lives lost on both sides. And it's extremely unfortunate. It's very, very sad to see on the newsreel babies and children being bombed. And Israel, to their defense, they sent out pamphlets for people to get out of the way.
Hamas,
they sent texts out to people that they stay away. So they didn't intentionally want to harm. And
I guess the
their
children didn't
intention
get those
was
texts.
to get at the terrorist groups that are governing Gaza. And you know what? There's going to be hate there for another 150 years.
Well, and some would say, Tara, last word to you, we've only got a couple of minutes left here. Some would say that, in fact, Israel's moves have strengthened Hamas. They're celebrating in the streets of Gaza. So has that backfired a little bit, even though Mr. Harper wouldn't want that to occur?
Larry, these people are fighting for their very existence. I cannot, we're, as Canadians, we are so blessed to live in relative harmony with all different cultures and religions. But the people of Israel they have it from all sides, and they have to have the right to protect themselves and their territory. People die on both sides of that border, and it's unfortunate in all cases. I wish that they could come to some agreement, and perhaps one day in the future they will. But right now, that is really not possible. Yes, there is a ceasefire. I don't know how long that's going to hold. I agree with Prime Minister Stephen Harper. We do not deal with terrorists, and that's why we are so strongly aligned with Israel.
And Larry, sorry, I just want to clarify that my criticism was of both sides.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they both have committed enormous atrocities against humans. And I think that, really nobody should be building on that land. Nobody.
Well,
it should be just put aside. Nobody should be allowed to settle.
Think that we should be talking with Hamas?
I think that, if this is such a holy land, then why is everyone spilling blood on it?
Well, we don't deal with terrorist organizations like Hamas.
Well, and of course, we've not heard the end of it, and I think all parties in the House of Commons agree that Israel needs to protect itself. All of them as well abhor the violence and the death of children and others that occurs when these occur. Let's just pray that there's a long-term solution found here. My guess is that it really would involve everybody needs to talk.
That's right. Everyone has to be at the table.
Listen, we are now in the lightning round, and we're going to start with you, Ron. And of course, you know the rules. You get one shot at this, about 30 seconds, then I'll interrupt and move to the other person. And this one is about the marijuana laws, or the liberalization of those laws, the legalization of recreational use of marijuana in a couple of the states in the United States where the people have actually voted in favor of that. We've talked about this, but there's a new twist. The head of the UN anti-drug organization has asked the governors of those two states to reconsider what their citizens have done and interfere to try to stop the liberalization of these laws. What do you think?
Well, you know what? It's really ironic that you have the UN interfering with two states that have passed a law regarding marijuana, when you have Mexico and the carnage that's going on in Mexico between the drug lords and people dying in the streets and being beheaded. Uruguay just passed a law legalizing the personal use of marijuana in their country.
Tara.
Well, I've seen what that does to Amsterdam, and I wouldn't want to live there either. But we just talk about the UN, and I know that the Conservatives have a different view of the UN than the other two parties. And to the states, I would just say ignore the UN's advice.
Well, that's a whole other topic, ignoring the UN. But what do you make of the admonition, at least, to reconsider?
Well, I do think that the UN needs to bud out, Larry. But I will say that they are right that it does send the wrong message in terms of. But then again, if the argument I go back to, if we're going to have alcohol, then I don't see why we would not have the legalization of marijuana as well.
Fair enough. Alex, we're going to stay with you, and this is a provincial issue where Mr. Hudak, the leader of Tara's party, has said that public sector pensions are too rich. And if he were in government, in fact, he has issued some pretty direct cautions about this, he would reduce these gold-plated pensions for firefighters, police, teachers. It's not just a question of capping salaries, but actually dealing with entitlements through pensions by rolling them back. For new hires, what do you make of that?
Larry, viewers have to remember that these gains, because Hudak said, well, you know, this is enormous. This is, you know, certainly the gravy train in terms of the pensions that they receive. But every single, you know, pension benefit that these employee groups have, they gave up something to have it. So if the government doesn't want to give them the pensions anymore, then they need to negotiate for it properly, not put in a 115 bill, and get to the table.
Fair enough.
And we see how those negotiations always pan out in the province of Ontario, especially. Unfortunately, the Liberal government has been pandering to groups for too long, and some of these pensions truly are too rich, and not everyone is getting it. It's just not fair, and they do need to be rolled back.
Ron?
Well, I think everyone in the province of Ontario should be on some sort of pension other than CPP, because you know, life creeps up on you.
But are they too rich? And should they be
I
rolled
think
back?
they are too rich for and grandfather it in for any new hires. But like you said, it's all negotiated, and whatever they've negotiated, that's what they're getting. Yeah. So if they get to the table, we negotiate it. But everyone should have a pension in this province.
All right. And this one, Ron, we're going to stay with you. This has to do with the job cuts at the federal level. You know that we have a deficit, and the government has cut over 10,000 jobs, we hear, to try to reduce that. Most of them through attrition, which is the least harmful of ways. But there are 10,000 fewer people, fewer job opportunities for Canadians to have. What do you make of that? Right track, wrong track?
Well, I think it's the right track for one thing, because if the government is getting over-bloated and really fat with too many employees, and we cannot sustain that cost any longer, through attrition is the best way rather than any layoffs. But if departments in the government are just, you know, they got employees all over the place and half of them aren't doing anything, well then you could trim down.
Tara?
Well, I mean, this is something that we campaigned on, and it's something that that had to be done. I am glad that many of those jobs were cut through attrition. Then there are others, though, unfortunately. No one likes to go home at night and say that they lost their job. But I think the plan, for the reason that we did it so quickly, was that you want to give people certainty of their situation and what they're getting into. And if you extended this over a 6 or 8 month period, it eats away at you if you don't have certainty of your position in your job.
Alex?
It's interesting, Harper's spokesperson said that they sped up the cuts, the job cuts, in order to provide employees with clarity, so that they, you know, presumably would have clarity that that they perhaps couldn't afford, you know, presents this Christmas because they didn't have a job, that they weren't sure, they had that much more clarity, that they don't know where, you know, next month's paycheck's going to come from. I don't know what kinds of clarity he thought that these employees would
you understand that there's severance and things going on there.
But
it's not like these people are just walking out the door.
You know, I think that clarity or stability would be given with having them have their jobs a little bit longer.
We're going to have to stop there. It would be interesting to look at where the job cuts have been made as well, because some of them have been made in inspectors and environmental sectors, and so that there's some. That's for another day. But now it's my turn, and I want to talk about prorogation. And the question is prorogation really that bad? We've already talked about the fact that the government has been able to, in spite of the fact that the legislature is not sitting, the government itself, to negotiate some deals through some proxies, but they have the final say on some of those deals. And we have eliminated the histrionics, the games that sometimes are played, especially at question period, that people feel uneasy about. So in spite of the fact that legislature is closed, and prorogation always happens, it's a word that some people may not have known existed before Harper brought it into fashion, prorogation always happens. Is it good to sometimes take a time out and just allow government to govern without the shenanigans? Alex, let's start with you.
I think that prorogation's neither improved nor decreased or had, I guess, a negative impact on the negotiations that were going on around the province. These deals are being hammered out across school boards right now because school boards rolled up their sleeves and took on leadership that was not being shown at the provincial level to hammer out these deals. And that would have happened regardless of whether we had a government in place or not.
So prorogation neutral, Tara?
Sometimes it can be useful, like when parties are trying to hijack the government. You too. And then in this past case with the Liberals, I don't think that it was the right course of action. Yes, deals are being hammered out, but we have no course to go and ask questions about this. And I don't think that question period is a nuisance, Larry. I think that it's necessary in our democratic system.
Exactly.
Oh, there's a lot of shenanigans going on through question periods. And I believe that this prorogation has done well in this province because we are getting deals done. We got deals done with the doctor. We got deals done with the doctors, and we got deals done with the teachers. So I think it has done us well, and we did need a little rest, a little break, a little breather, and when we come back to work.
Very good.
Maybe Dalton didn't want to answer any more questions.
All right, here we go.
Exactly.
Here we go. Here we go. We're right now at a period when we have to say goodbye to our audience and thank them for watching the Opinionators. We have been talking to our panel of experts, and you know what? If you join us a week from today on the 29th of November, we are going to talk about some important topics in an interesting way again.
Tara Cronali's Hair by Ludi Mamoda Hair and Aesthetic Studio, 169 James Street North in downtown Hamilton.